Welcome to this oral history interview, part of the developing series of interviews focusing on live music venues and experiences on Route 66, centered around Springfield and Greene County, Missouri, and Lebanon and Pulaski County, Missouri. This series is supported in part by a grant from the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program of the National Park Service. My name is Craig Amason with Missouri State University Libraries. Today's date is Friday, July 2nd, 2022, and our special guests today are Beth Spindler and Kevin Richardson. Beth and Kevin both worked in the early 1980s at Kentwood Arms, home of the Fox and Hounds Lounge on St. Louis Street on Route 66. Beth performed as a singer with several well-known musicians in the area during that period, which we are going to dive into shortly. This interview is taking place in the Duane G. Meyer Library on the campus of Missouri State University. Beth and Kevin, thank you so much for agreeing to participate in this project and for coming here today to talk with me.
Yeah, good to be here.
When and where were the two of you born? That's the toughest first question.
Springfield.
Springfield?
Yeah.
Springfield, but actually we lived in Norwood,
He
Missouri.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you grow up in Springfield?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you?
Oh yeah,
Okay. Mind telling me when you were born?
1958.
Okay.
59.
Okay. Beth, you grew up singing in the Methodist church, right? Some?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what drew you to jazz music from the Methodist church? Because I'm sure the Methodist church at that time wasn't very jazzy. I'm just
Judgy there.
just guessing.
I think probably it started when my family had a record subscription. And back in the day, we got a big wooden cabinet turntable, and with that came a subscription to get 50 albums. And so there were 6 kids in the family, and we each got to pick out albums, and there wasn't a great selection, and so a lot of them were meant for older people, and so I picked them out by how the cover looked, because I was just a little kid, and the ones that I picked happened to be kind of jazzy, and I started listening to singers like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and stuff when I was young, and I always liked I always liked it when my ears would perk up when I'd hear swing or bossa nova or whatever on Ed Sullivan and all that stuff when I'd be watching when I'd be watching the Andy Williams show or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I like that stuff, and I'd be up moving around to it, and it was what I liked, and never really got into the rock stuff. He can tell you that when he met me, about as close to rock as I ever got was Frank Zappa. That was
That's the only album you had, I think.
Well, that's not a bad selection. That's interesting. So, but I'm sure your friends were probably all into the rock scene, and probably didn't have the appreciation for jazz that you did.
No.
Right?
No.
So you're sort of the outlier.
So at 15, some neighborhood kids and I formed a band, and this was with Don and Mike Sharp and Mike Brill, who was in school with us on piano, who was in theater and played, and we had a variety, lots of different drummers in the
First one being Dick Clark.
Dick Clark, yeah, but
Not the Dick Clark.
not the Dick Clark, no. But
Dick Clark, yeah.
had this little band, and he had his dad's real book, and a real book is purloined music that wasn't you didn't pay royalties on, and so he had this huge thing, and so we started learning every song in that real book, and so we knew all these musty, crusty old get over standards. So we could. He said, his dad said, if you want to play gigs, you need to play country club gigs, and you need to be able to play casuals, and you need to go in and play dance gigs, because old people have money, young people don't have any money. So we learned these tunes, and we'd go in
And did you get the gigs?
yeah, when we were 15, 16.
The strangest one being the one on Battlefield, which was a rock bar.
Safari
The
Lounge.
Safari Lounge that you got for a week. You played there a week.
You had a residency.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that until you just said that.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's like,
wonderful.
wow.
Yeah, and here we were, these little kids in there. I generally passed for a lot older at that age, but they kept a pretty close eye on us in there.
That's great.
But
So I know you guys got married in 1979, correct? On Christmas Day.
That is correct.
How did you meet?
Through a mutual friend.
Okay.
Actually, my two-door up neighbor, Mark Burton.
Mm-hmm.
Mark and I were friends, and by the time we started driving, he said, "I want you to meet." I don't know. The first time we met was.
it was probably
the church, at Wesley.
Yeah.
Through the youth group.
Yeah.
I went with him to the youth group there once, and I met Beth, and then we started hanging out. All the three of us.
My
hang out.
house was a hang.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we would go over and visit.
And so there were always kids at my house. And
I don't know how
he was the
long it
quiet
was.
one.
Yeah, I was
He-
very quiet.
He was always
Very shy.
He was over in the corner. Yeah.
I don't know how long it was, and then finally it was kind of like, I got the nerve to ask her out. And after we went out the first time, it was kind of like, okay, I think this is a thing. And then we had to tell Mark, we could hang out, but.
But not nearly
Guess
as
what?
much as we were.
Yeah, we're going to do some stuff on our own. Okay?
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you're coming along in the 70s, in the mid 70s here. This is when you're really beginning to get into the music scene. You're actually
Yeah.
getting into the music scene,
Yeah.
the local music scene. So, if you had to use one word to describe the music scene in Springfield in the late 70s and into the early 80s, what would it be?
It was luck of the draw, and it was. I have to say, I was fortunate most of the time, and when I was really young, it was. I fell into one of the luckiest things was John Simpson and Rock Lane Lodge in Branson.
Oh, absolutely.
My band in my little band Starfire that we were got hired to work down there, and we were playing eclectic mix and dressing alike, all of us in our little matching outfits and showing up and trying to be a show band and do all this. But he liked us. He'd heard us at a symphony bash and hired us, and we had a regular gig down there, and that was a rarity because music business everywhere was heading into disco, heading into,
Sure.
and recorded music was the thing, and live music was going down fast, and nobody was hiring live bands.
Right.
And so I have to say, we were really, really fortunate to have the work that we did, and meet the people that we did. We, the kindness of strangers, that was the deal.
So would you say that the music industry as a whole, but even on the local level, the music scene was in a state of transition at that time?
Oh,
Pretty serious transition?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it was heavy country. And then, it was disco and country, and we were neither.
Uh-huh, right.
And it was people coming up, and if you don't play no Merle Haggard,
Uh-huh,
you can just leave,
right.
And
Right.
And so it was. Well,
Merle Haggard wasn't at the top of your set list.
It wasn't my forte, but.
Well, you sang backing vocals for the Ozark Mountain Daredevils Rhythm and Joy 1980 reunion concert in Kansas City. Is that correct?
I did, and at Hammond's Hall. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this also during the time that you and Jody Troutman
Yeah.
were singing backup for the Daredevils? Is that coincide with the same?
And Connie Ripley.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we were all. They were already in the. Jody and Connie were in the band. Had been selected to do it, and they needed one more person.
Uh-huh.
And it was at the time. I was singing at the Kentwood at that
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
and somebody said, "Beth, some of the Daredevils are here." I said, "Yeah." They said, "No, they're scouting you. I think there's," and I'm like, "No, that's ridiculous." So anyway, they after that they said, we need a third backup singer. Would you be interested? And I looked in my wallet and I said, "Yes."
That's a very good reason. Did you do any recording with them, or was it just live
It
performances?
was just the live shows,
Yep.
and we had a blast. We acted up, we didn't get asked back because I think we acted up a little too much. We were.
I'd love to hear any stories that you're willing to share about that.
And we showed up we surprised them in Kansas City on New Year's, and we rented tuxedos. They didn't know we were going to be in tuxedos, and we were in tuxes. And then we had for one number we had rainbow afros, gigantic rainbow afros, and then one number, I think it was Thin Ice. We had little strips on these little visor glasses. Thin Ice, baby, and we were doing this business, and we just,
We're taking it so serious.
we were being pretty goofy.
Was it fun?
It was fun. We had a good time.
Yep.
We had a good time, and every time something comes up about it on Facebook, the three of us all get a good laugh about it.
You can find references to that on the net, which I did, of course. That's great. Did that give you any taste of any other kind of music, or are you just saying this is going to help my pocketbook for a while, or did you like the music?
I done a ton of jingles.
Mm-hmm.
Worked. I did a bunch of jingles for Nick Sibley. Done a bunch of backup stuff for a number number of people. I've been in and out of the studio a lot for local people, and recently I was doing some stuff for Andy Havens. Just he said, "Hey, do you want to come in?" I said, "Sure, I'll come in." And Johnny Strickler and some people doing some work for him. So, yeah.
Well, getting back to jazz, you were the president of the Springfield Jazz Society for a while at a very young age.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that organization?
Wow, it was actually, it was booming.
It was an interesting time because the live music scene was a combination of people that had been in the big bands, and then the local young guys coming up, like the guys that were in Entropy and the guys that were in your group. And so there was this kind of passing of the torch in a way of that going on. And I think Springfield has always gone through kind of a cyclical thing with jazz. And so actually at that time it was kind of hot right then, because the older guys were playing. They actually played at Hooten's before Chuck and Beth played there.
Johnny Harris.
Well, it was Dallas Bartley.
Yeah.
Johnny Harris, the pianist, and I can't think who the drummer was. But there was a trio, and they played at Hooten's.
Yeah.
And they played out in the middle of the restaurant, which was really weird.
It was bizarre. It was a weird setup, but it was.
So we used to go out and do that. There were some fundraisers that happened during that time.
Yeah.
One was by the Jazz Society that you put together at Claire Thompson Hall at
Yeah,
Missouri.
it was big.
And all the people played there. We had pictures of Richard Bruton playing there. There was some guy that was in Branson at that time who was a hotshot trumpet player.
Yeah.
He was kind of a bridge between the old guys and the new guys.
Yeah, I wish I had.
I have no idea what his name
Yeah,
is.
I've got somebody know, but
Eddie Eugene's name came up.
Eddie. Yeah.
Well, there was Eddie Eugene who went back to vaudeville.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other guy
But he was performing then?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing performer.
Oh yeah. What
Just
a voice.
this skinny little guy, and
He didn't need a microphone. He just
at all.
he could take a concert hall and just.
And he did. He was there that day too. Yeah. So it was an interesting time. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And the Daredevils, of course, were having their reunion, and Entropy, like I said. That was about it, jazz-wise. So it was contained, but people were actually playing live, which was fun to be around. For me,
Yeah.
fun for you because you got some gigs out of it.
That was pretty much on a weekly basis that was happening?
Yeah, and a lot of the things went on over at Christchurch Unity, which was an interesting
Yeah,
thing.
that was an interesting phenomenon. In the 60s.
Because David Schumacher was a huge jazz fan who was the pastor there, and he would host bunches of jazz things there. So we got to use that as a venue.
We have pictures of that.
Yeah,
too.
we have a
There's
bunch of
there.
things that went on over there. So that was a.
That was BeBop Brown and some other
Yeah.
guys that I can't remember their names, but
Yeah,
we have a few pictures of that.
Yeah.
How long were you president of the society?
I don't know, couple of years.
It's about a year,
Year,
2
2
years,
years,
something like that.
They just, I attended some meetings and they said, we're gonna make you president and we're gonna elect you and make you, and I was like, oh, come on, kid. Yeah.
Oh, and kind of the passing of the torch at that point was Lee Stover. Lee Stover was the singer that was known in the area.
Yeah, you might.
Had sung with big bands, I think.
Yeah,
Some
she was a big band singer and well known. She kind of was in that group with Rocky Helwig and
Paul, who's the organist? Paul
Mitchell.
And he was playing regularly at Christchurch Unity.
And Paul Mitchell was another known big band.
He played with
Harry James.
Harry James.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So it was really
A lot of
interesting
activity.
time.
Oh,
A lot
yeah.
of activity for
Yeah.
Springfield.
And-
I mean, it was
yeah,
pretty fun.
yeah, we were kind of we were the next gen from that big band
Mm-hmm.
era, and some of those old guys kind of didn't want me sitting in either. It was sort of like,
I
yeah,
bet.
you know,
The guys club, yeah.
Yeah, there was that
she's
stigma.
in here.
We can't say the same things that we were saying if you're gonna be in the room.
Yeah.
And the thing about Beth, what Beth was used to, and what was totally new to those guys, was the singer got up every once in a while and sang a song.
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of a little variety,
Yeah.
pepper, a little seasoning.
That largely was instrumental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where you don't get in the middle of the
Yeah.
lead players. You know, they're the stars.
That's so interesting because there are genres that lend themselves to that. Some of the traditional Ozarks music is like that, and some of the old timers who are real deep into it, they don't like the singing. They just want the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Beth was used to singing every song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was with Starfire, you would take a break, like maybe one song a set, just to
One.
feature, so they
Yeah.
could feature them.
Yeah.
But other than that, you were on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't like you were just
And
whenever.
and when I went to San Francisco, I sang up to I'd do back-to-back gigs, and there were times I would sing up to 11 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
Just-
So that was just
sing
unusual.
all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is it true that you were only 17 when you started working at the Fox and Hound? I've gotten, by the way, I'm going to have to ask a question. Is it Fox and Hound or Fox and Hounds? Because you will see it written both ways in the literature from that period, contemporary literature,
I believe it's Fox and Hounds.
plural. That would make sense.
Yeah.
There's only one fox and multiple hounds hunting him.
I really don't know, but that's
I think Fox and Hounds. I think that was what was said, but
So at any rate, you were 17.
I think the very first go round when Grady and I popped in there, that was a funny situation because I had worked a show with him, and we came in and heard. Actually, it was Jody and Nick playing in Fox and Hounds, and he was on guitar and she was singing, and they were doing kind of a comedy fun thing, and they were playing, and Grady said, you know, he and I were talking, and I was just this little kid in the show, but he knew I'd done some club work, and he said, you know, we ought to do something here, and I said, yeah, that'd be great, and we managed to get a gig about this long because he sat down at that piano and it was so badly out of tune that you couldn't. It was a fiasco. It was horrible. And so he goes to see Arch Bay and says, you know, we need to tune the piano. And he says, great, we'll get a guitar player. Bye, gig. That was the end of the gig. So that was my first gig at the Fox and Hounds. We were there for about a week or so, and then we were hired again later on. But
So you would have been what? That would have been like 1975, 76?
no, well, say 70, 78, 70.
78.
Yeah,
Okay.
They were
like
both
that.
in
All right.
Fiddler at the
Yeah.
theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fiddler.
So okay, that's interesting. So you guys graduate from high school. Beth, you attended here at SMS at the time.
What happened was I one year, I didn't even finish my first year in high school here. I left school, finished through correspondence that year, and started to Missouri State at 15.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That would have been unusual too.
Yeah, a little weird.
And you were a jury.
Yes.
How did y'all end up at your respect? How did you end up at jury?
His mom taught there.
Well, yeah, she taught there, and then she also got her master's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they said, I think you need to go to jury.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I ended up there.
Well, by 1981, you were performing just about every week at Fox and Hounds with Grady Affolter. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And was that also while you were with the BeBop band? Or does this coincide or not?
I was late. I was after.
That was later.
That was later.
Yeah.
The band was later?
That was later.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So it was just the two of you, and that was your main gig,
That was it.
right?
That's what I was doing.
And playing weekly. Was it just once a week, or was it?
No, it was
Fridays and Saturdays.
Fridays and Saturdays.
That was it. Fridays and
And we tried to expand it to Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays sometimes when they'd have events.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, that was when it would be one of the Shriners events or something like that. They
Mhm.
sometimes
Sure.
yeah, and that was the most eclectic bar in the
Yeah.
I want to get to that. That's
Yeah.
my next question was going to be your memories from music there, about the audiences. Yeah,
You really want to know?
I do.
Okay.
I want to know all.
Okay. Yeah, it was Shriners and businessmen. It was theater people and
college kids.
and college kids. It was drag queens. It was
People from the Greyhound bus station.
it was people from the bus station. It was yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You never knew who was going to walk.
It was, you really had absolutely no idea who was going to come in through that door. And did you ever have a fight?
Which, no, but I mean, which speaks to the Route 66 thing. Because the bus was still on that route.
Yeah.
The bus station was like 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away.
Now, since you said that, I'm going to ask my follow-up question, and then I'll go back to some other things. But do you think that being located on Route 66 made that the clientele of that club different than the clientele of clubs in other places in Springfield?
Yeah. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's totally the location. Because it was right next to the university.
Yep.
Not that far from the theater, from a little theater.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of a gathering place from different points.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, people have really fond memories of it.
Oh yeah, if you ask people about the Fox and Hounds, they were like, oh yeah, the Fox and Hounds.
If you were not a member of the country club and spending your money at your country club, is that where you went?
Oh no.
Oh, wait.
Because you say businessmen.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Now,
there was that.
we had, I had lawyers that would come in. There were doctors that would come in that I
that's true.
still have that are in contact with me that are like, you remember the day?
Well, here's I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
You're right. Here's the thing. In San Francisco, there was this place called Pier 23.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
the Pier 23 of Springfield.
Yeah, That's
if
exactly.
you're familiar with that place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's eclectic. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
it's sort of avant-garde kind of.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, for
sort of.
Springfield.
Yeah.
It was, I mean,
Because if you're saying you've got people, drag people
Oh, yeah.
in the late
With
1970s.
business people mixing in the same
Yes.
place. Yeah.
That's kind of interesting to me.
Oh, yeah. And
yeah.
that was the crowd.
And it was pretty well known that was, in that time period, that there was a large gay population
Uh-huh.
that were at the club, and people, it was just like, okay,
It felt welcome there, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
not a problem.
yeah.
That's kind of the Venn diagram of alternative.
Do you think more so than any other place in Springfield?
At that time,
that I know of.
yeah. College Street Station again.
Yeah.
Kind
Did the same-
of did that. Yeah.
Did it again, and a classier job of it. Now, Fox and Hounds, if people were coming in, they really couldn't see exactly what was going on. If you came in and opened up Fox and Hounds, now,
Oh boy.
yeah, the cockroaches flew. I mean, they were flying
Yeah,
around.
you wouldn't want to see it with the lights on.
No.
That was
And
part of
the-
the mystique.
And the popcorn machine, it would burn at least once a night. So you had this continual funk of burned popcorn, and the bays wouldn't pay for more than 3 lemons a night, right? This was a thing.
Something like that, yeah.
And so the bartenders, if they wanted to get tipped, would bring in their own lemons.
Yeah, they buy their own stuff.
Yeah, they'd bring in their own stuff.
Okay, that's interesting because this is inside the Kentwood Arms, which was actually still, I would think, at that time, still a fairly nice place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
people
know, the
were
crystal
coming in
room
and sitting at the table in the white table
With the
cloth
tablecloth
in the
and the whole
other
thing,
room.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And on the other side of the wall, it was party, raunchy sometimes. It was
Yeah.
And there would
crazy.
be affluent people in there from time to time, too,
Oh, sure.
with the burnt popcorn
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
and the sticky floor and the whole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that was the
Yeah. Yeah.
that was the attraction of the Fox and Hounds all year round, because you would come in and it was dim, except for up where the piano was. There were lights there, and it wasn't. I mean, it was like you couldn't see your way through. It was just
Yeah.
everything was subdued.
And we did say racially mixed too. It was comfortably racially mixed.
True.
Yeah.
Would you say that, I was going to ask about the racial mix, and I was
Yeah.
going to ask also about the gender mix. The racial mix, do you think it would have mirrored the community as far as proportions are concerned?
Probably at the time.
Uh-huh.
It was or maybe a little more. We probably had a little
What's the
higher
students
black
from
demographic
from
than,
Missouri
Yeah.
State?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that.
and
So you'd have
the
kids in
and the
ours.
gay population that
Yeah.
that hung out.
Exclusively jazz that you were doing?
No.
And you're doing
No,
everything?
cabaret mainly,
Uh-huh.
and we did a lot of just we had to throw in a lot of really bawdy nonsense
Uh-huh.
songs.
Any contemporary stuff at all from the period?
Some. We tried to keep it, tasteful kind of stuff. We did a lot of, Roberta Flack and
Uh-huh.
and Donny Hathaway and that kind of that type of stuff. George Benson and all that stuff. That was, so that and show music of that era and yeah.
Yeah, it's almost crossover, kind of between jazzy pop.
Jazzy.
Yeah, because Roberta Flack, I think.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and George Benson, definitely.
Yeah.
And what about the gender mix, male to female to drag?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw in?
Yeah.
What do you think the mix was? Evened out, or?
say, yeah, pretty even.
Yeah, especially on Friday and Saturday night.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it was, the thing about the Fox and Hounds was, another thing was, it was intimate. If you wanted to hear somebody playing music, I mean, basically, the Fox and Hounds if it still exists in the form that it did then, was not much bigger than this room.
Oh, really?
With that, not much bigger than that, maybe a little bit of the hallway, but you could see everybody in the place. I mean, you didn't have to talk very loud for everybody to hear you.
Okay, you're bringing up my next question. I was going to ask, what did the inside of the place look like? What was the layout?
Booths, fireplace. He could draw it for you.
I could.
He could very accurately. Fireplace, booths.
With the fox on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And when you walked in the door, where was the bar?
Well, there's two doors.
Okay, 2 entrances.
There was the main entrance, which was off the parking lot from the front. It was off to kind of the side of the
The exterior entrance.
Yeah. So you kind of walked down. It was kind of a couple of steps down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came into a landing, which was over here. And there were a couple of steps there, 2 or 3 steps. Came into a landing, and you could kind of survey the whole place. And then you came down there, and then in the front, about where that desk is, the grand piano was there. And there was kind of an open space. You could walk over to the bar. The bar was over here at an angle. There was a window into the restaurant over there to get food. There's a little hallway and a door that went out into the hallway to the restrooms. And then right by that door is the popcorn machine, and kind of curves back around. And there were, that was another thing, was there were booths. You had the main area, and then there were 4 or 5 booths around there. And then the fireplace was over here, and it recessed back to the fireplace and the sitting area, and then you were back at the landing. That backed up to the railing at the landing.
So the music was not so amplified that you couldn't have a conversation.
There was no amplifier. Well, you had a mic.
I had mine.
I can't
His
remember how
piano
that
was
was.
never.
Did we just have a speaker? It was just
Couple.
plugged into a speaker. We had
Yeah,
a little
couple.
tiny speaker.
Yeah, couple.
Like a little PA.
Yeah, we had a
little
little,
bitty,
that's
little
right.
bitty
It was a
PA.
PA. Right?
And the Fox and Hounds was a notorious hookup place for. Your story is one of my that he
That was
was.
a great story.
Yeah, they were the guy. That
This is how notorious it was, because one night, there was always a mood of the night. There was one night, and
Not that. Oh, I was talking about the guy that came in with the girl.
that's one I'm talking
The
about.
other one.
That's
The
the
other.
one. No, that's the one.
Oh no, this is a different one.
Yeah, this is the same
This
guy.
is no, it's not
This
the
is the
same.
same guy.
No, I know which one you're talking about.
So it's Friday night. It's Friday
You can
night.
do both.
But there was always a dynamic of the room. And Beth and Grady usually created the dynamic. But there was one night that was exceptional. It was just like, it was like an episode of Cheers. The bartenders, because I was working there. It was 9 months that they were there. Or maybe a little longer than they were there. So I was there, I was working. There was another bartender. Beth and Grady, and then this really lively, receptive crowd. In walks this kid, this college kid, SMS student, with a girl. And everybody in the place can't say anything that isn't hysterically funny. The whole night. I mean, it just kept getting better and better and better.
And we're doing every funny song that we've ever done, just boom.
And it's just building and building and building, and the whole night is like this. And everybody's roaring and having a great time, drinking a lot, So next night is the polar opposite. Grady's in a bad mood. So if Grady's in a bad mood,
Nobody's
in a good mood. So about midway in the night, in walks the same kid with a different girl.
He's like,
Literally, he hits the landing like that with this girl, like, hey,
I'm here, I'm here.
and everybody looks over at him.
They're like,
And it just went down from there.
like, up yours, man.
And I kept looking over, and the girl's like, what? You brought me here?
You said they knew you.
Yeah, you knew it's going to be fun.
That's wonderful.
You had the guy that came in that when you were just tending bar that he was like.
Oh, that's a totally different story in the daytime.
Yeah, in the daytime.
They don't want to hear that story. No.
Oh, the guy.
That has nothing to do with music, but
No,
it was the Fox and Hounds.
But it's about the Fox and Hounds. The guy.
Okay, really quickly. There was a guy.
We're doing the venues, not just the music.
Okay, well, this was part of the Fox and Hounds. So I worked the daytime. And it was dead. I mean, there was nothing going on. Daytime. Nothing happened till happy hour.
Right.
But except, this was during the summer of 1980. There was this guy, there was this woman who would come, sit in a booth, order a drink. A guy would come in, he would order a drink, they would have lunch, and then they would leave. So this happened week after week after week, and so finally, the cardinal rule of a service person is never assume anything. So I came in and she had gone to the ladies' room, and I said, "Would your wife like another drink?" He said, "That's not my wife."
Yeah.
She probably would, but you'll have to call her.
I don't know where she is.
Do not ask about the Shriner weekends. Do not.
Oh, no.
Okay, because, well, I mean, I just have to know, I mean, the stereotypes about Shriner parties, I mean, is that,
Let me tell you, it did happen.
is that legit?
It was 1 week, yeah.
I mean, that's like a scene out of Bye Bye Birdie or something, right?
Ew.
Oh, worse than
Worse.
that. It was not G.
Oh, no.
It was not G.
Nothing cute.
No.
Mm-mm.
And got away with anything they wanted to do, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was, yeah.
Well, that's
just-
part of the story.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. I just would have to wear like a chicken wire.
Chainmail.
Just personally wear chicken wire.
Yeah, I'm sure abominable. Yeah, that's tough. So, and you were playing the late night, right?
Yeah.
You'd start what, around 9?
9 to 12, and yeah.
Or maybe it was 9 to 1.
9 to 1 was it?
Yeah.
So happy hour had already come and gone, and people were pretty lubricated by the time that
Oh,
you
yeah.
went on, right?
Oh yeah, the people that were still there,
Uh-huh.
yeah, they were having a good time.
What average crowd size?
It was so erratic, It was completely. There was never anything. There was not
The
enough.
capacity was maybe 50, no, it wasn't even 50 people.
I don't even
I
think.
think it was like
yeah.
35 to 40.
Yeah.
It was small.
It was a small room.
Because it was just the bar.
Yeah.
I think I forgot about
Halloween, sometimes you get 50 plus people in there.
Yeah, and it was packed.
Party nights. Yeah.
I mean, it was,
Yeah.
it was wall people.
I don't know if you would have known or not, but out-of-towners, people from out of town coming into the
Sure.
club?
Yeah.
And would they come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm from Kansas City, hey, I'm from St. Louis," or
All the
whatever?
time. Yeah.
Did that happen quite a bit?
Yeah. All
Once again, do you think that's linked to the
the
location?
Of course, yeah.
Route
They
66.
stay in there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other performers there that you knew about other than the two of you?
As I said, Nick and Jody, and Terry.
Terry Arms.
Yeah, Terry Arms played there.
He was a solo.
Solo guitar player. I think he's the
songwriter.
one who played when they canned Grady and I because they didn't want to tune the piano.
Yeah, that's who they hired, was Terry.
Terry Arms.
Yeah. Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was playing pizza places, and they hired him to come in and do that. And
They had
I
music
I
up in the
played there
Crystal Room
a little
for
bit.
events.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
Caduceus used to play there
Yeah,
for society events, the Doctors Band.
yeah, a lot.
Uh-huh.
That was one of their
It
standard.
actually had a lot of musicians in it that weren't doctors
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
Because one of the guys I went to high school with was a trumpet player that played in that band.
yeah. I played with members of that group. I
Yeah.
worked with the Dixie Ducks. I worked with
Yeah.
I worked with the Dixie Ducks band for a while.
Was everybody playing at the Fox and Hounds at least? Was everybody playing similar music, or was there different acts were playing different kinds of music, or?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it
Completely
was
different.
everybody was playing completely different
Mhm.
stuff. You know, I don't know that. For instance, you know, I don't think what Nick and Jody were doing. I doubt if there was an overlap of 5 tunes to
Mhm.
what Grady and I were doing, or what Tim Sanpaolo and I were doing when we played there. And
Set those 2 times, the time that you were playing with Grady
and with Tim.
and with Tim.
Yeah. Year-wise,
Yeah.
wow. Tim was after I worked there with Grady. It was when Grady was in New York, and Tim and I played there and did we did a lot of show music and a lot of jazz. We did a lot more like Manhattan Transfer kind of
Mhm.
vocalese sort of stuff and that type of stuff, and still some show stuff, but really arranged pieces. And I don't think I ever worked with just a jazz player specifically there, did I? I never worked with
that's-
Davey or any of those guys
No.
at Kentwood.
Well, I mean, you did for Chuck's memorial. 'Cause
Yeah,
that was at the Crystal Room.
yeah, no, when I worked with
So that was.
Davey.
Davey Scott,
Mhm.
yeah, Dave Scott, and that was after
Yeah.
that time period, and we worked in more Buffalo Bar and Lindbergh's and
C Street, yeah.
yeah.
Right. I know that Springfield was blessed with an embarrassment of musical riches back then. I mean, like you've met Johnny Harris, BeBop Brown, Dallas Barkley,
Yeah.
so forth. Was it common for large acts or bands from around the country to appear in Springfield, or were they mostly regional performers at that time?
There, you know, we had visiting major acts that would come through and play the Shrine Mosque, but that was, as far as playing the smaller venues, not a lot that we were aware of. Do you remember?
Just mostly local
And sometimes the college campuses. Yeah,
Right, sure.
yeah.
Sure.
And
But like the Route 66 club, like this, would mostly be local people.
mostly local.
Yeah.
Mostly local, you know, we'd go out to hear like good horn players and all that come to.
Yeah, well, Murphy's kind
Campuses.
of changed that because he would get in
That's true, yeah.
Regional
Yeah.
Mhm.
people from Kansas City, St. Louis.
We
Mhm.
I
Maybe
opened
Arkansas.
Murphy's, by the way, and that's on Route 66.
Just off. Yeah.
Just off Route 66, yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about Chuck Francisco and the JS band. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. How influential was Chuck to you and other musicians in the and other performers in the area?
Yeah.
Was he pretty influential? Or?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was I was coming out of having been considered a cabaret singer, you know, and my heart was in jazz, and I really wanted more than anything to be considered a serious jazz singer, and I knew that the bands in town like Entropy and some of the other players, even though I had been president of the Jazz Society and all, they kind of, she does, yeah, she's just this, you know, she just gets this because she kind of looks okay, and she just gets gigs. And I asked Chuck if he would play a gig with me, and he at that time was working with Entropy, and he accepted, and I was delighted. I was so delighted. And so he and I worked up, we worked up 4 hours of tunes. I had a bunch of good tunes in my book. I really knew a lot of tunes, and he added probably a stack of. He said, "No, you need to do this. You need to do this." He said, "Oh, you got a good range. Let's get these. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do this too." And then he'd slap a bunch of new songs, and we started working at Hooten's together, and he really hadn't done a lot of solo piano before, and he loved it. He just loved the freedom of being able to play full left hand and take nice solos and play really and he later, did he say it to you?
It seems like the way I remember it was at the memorial, and his wife.
Oh, his wife came
To you and said
that she said, Chuck, he said that his work with you was his favorite work that he had ever done.
That's lovely.
And I was so touched. Because I felt like I was such a kid, and I learned so much from him, and I felt like he really gave me a chance to actually do what I had always wanted to do, and from then on I really just worked jazz, you know, but a lot of times society jazz, but not just bebop, but society jazz as well. And Chuck died shortly after that. You had another question, and
No, I was just wondering how influential he was to performers in the area in general.
Yeah.
I would assume he was.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Chuck was enormously. He was. As a matter of fact, Chuck even. Chuck had, of course, it was pretty well known. Chuck had some issues with addiction, and he got it together, working with me, and he cleaned up and didn't drink on the gig, and did just he got it together, and
Did he play at venues on Route 66 normally?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. He played wherever he could play. You know, he'd take gigs.
Well, you got a National Foundation for the Arts grant, which made it possible for you to go to California, and you were there for a while and got to do some jazz there. But when you came back, time to start a family and that sort of thing, you had mentioned before the College Street station, and I know that by the time you were there, probably Route 66 had been decommissioned. But are you aware of, was it around before Route 66 went out in '85? Was it there before '85?
It was pretty new, wasn't it? Had Bobby just opened that?
I don't think that actually happened until.
Have you just come back? That was 87.
No, it was later. It was later. And
I read an article from
80.
1990, but I didn't know if that was when it first opened or not.
Yeah, we were just curious to know if it had been there earlier.
Yeah, that's probably very accurate if it's what you found, because it was only around about a year.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
It only lasted about a
It
year.
was so great.
It was ahead of its time.
Way.
It really was ahead of its time.
Really classy. Really nice.
It was like,
And it was
it's like those-
hugely
yeah.
successful.
it was successful.
And I don't know what happened.
I don't either. I think
I think
Bobby just kind of got tired of it, dealing with some of the things he had to deal with there.
it was
Because he
tough
opened,
traffic. It was he dealt with a lot of difficult traffic coming in to them
off the street.
yeah, and I think that kind of took a
So,
toll.
but he closed that business and
I
then he
know
opened
might
another
not have
business.
used that part, but,
It was a little cafe. It was just right off of
Oh,
Park Central.
yeah.
okay.
It was on Park Central West. And I
Yeah.
can't remember what the cafe's name was.
That may have been the name of
Cafe
it.
303, something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
We're here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think by that time too, you had clubs that were opening up further south and of the downtown, and
Yeah.
that's what we've heard from other
Yeah.
interviewees, and that the competition was getting tougher and pulling people away from
Yeah, just
downtown.
couldn't get the traffic down.
Right.
And doing the cafe, I'm sure he was more the business crowd,
Mhm.
the action
Mhm.
offices, state offices right there, so. He was a real savvy business guy, so he was like, you know what, I think it's time for something else.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking or saying that is that I'm wondering, was it a big deal that Route 66 came through Springfield as far as music is concerned? Do you think?
I think it actually is a big. I think it was a big deal. I think that that the fact that we had these big league players that were of all places, little Springfield during that time period. I think that was a big deal. I think that was. I don't know that little small town players like we would have had the exposure that we did if it wouldn't have been for where we were on the map. And I'm sure you've heard a lot too about all of of course the country music thing too was going on as well. There was just this flow of musicians that came through here, and I think it was really really a music town, and it did have an impact. It wasn't consciously we're on Route 66.
Yeah.
I know it was requested all the time. That was you had to decide to sing it all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
Seriously?
all the time. Yeah.
That was requested?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Almost. Yeah.
Okay, then I have to ask you to speculate.
Yeah.
Would it have been requested in a club in New Orleans as equally or as much as it was Here?
It was requested, honestly, a lot in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Uh-huh. Which
Yeah.
is not on Route 66.
No, not as much as it was here, though.
Yeah?
Here, almost always. Kansas City and here.
Yeah.
When I play Kansas City, they of course somebody's always say, Kansas City and Route 66, because everybody always wants shuffles, but do a shuffle. Well, they want a shuffle.
Yes.
They don't know it's a shuffle,
Yeah.
but they want a shuffle. They don't know it's a shuffle, but they want that so they can get out on the dance floor and do something.
Uh-huh.
But
And they do.
And for the second hour. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's I'd not really thought about that. But it being an in-demand song, and probably more so on the route itself than in other parts of the country.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, they want to hear the names of those cities.
Uh-huh.
They
Yeah.
want to hear it again.
Although Springfield is not in there, but Joplin is.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the. You've been very gracious with your time. Do you think there was? This is a very philosophical question. Do you think there was a conscious effort to create an American culture of freedom, entertainment, and tourism along Route 66 at the time, or is that an idea? Or is that idea something we've created after the highway, in modern times, long after the highway is gone? Do you think at the time, you said, I didn't consciously think about Route 66. Was it just passive and you're looking back now and thinking, well, yeah, it was important?
Yeah, that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, at the time, it was some old musty idea to me.
Uh-huh.
It was some old musty thing that my parents talked about.
Uh-huh.
That was my parents talked about Route 66. I was like, it's some old highway, something. I don't know what that is.
And they were speaking nostalgic in nostalgic manner about it.
Yeah, right. Or was it a thing?
It was not. Not conscious in our minds, really. But you heard about it, of course, because that was the only way to get from one coast to the other was that highway.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine, speculating on, from my age perspective, it's at that time they probably didn't think about it. It was just a function.
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably I would speculate the latter
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the former.
It's the nostalgia of it.
Yeah, it's just like you have to make an effort to do that route now. When we were living on the East Coast, there was an artist friend I had that her husband had always wanted to drive Route 66 from coast to coast.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, we better get to it and go do it, but they grew up on the East Coast. There was no, it was just a pilgrimage of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
In their mind, I've always heard about it, let's see what it was about.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was the way to get to Disneyland.
Yeah, well, sure.
For her,
Yeah.
It was how you got to Disneyland.
Yeah.
That's what you remember.
That's what I remember.
There's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow.
Yeah, and my mom saved green stamps, and we paid for our entire family, all the kids, all the adults, and my sister and her kids in California to go to Disneyland with green stamps.
S&H green stamp.
Yes.
Holy mackerel. How many books of stamps was that?
We ate a lot.
Somebody bought a lot of groceries for that. That's great. That's a wonderful story.
In a station wagon with no air conditioning.
In a station
Yeah.
wagon with no air conditioning, and I got sick in the desert with a high fever. And
Gosh, that's miserable.
Yeah.
So there was no romance about.
That was, but that was
Yeah,
really sick.
back then,
I remember getting really sick. But,
Yeah.
but I made it. And then I
But you
rode
went to
Dumbo,
Disneyland.
and I threw up.
Well, is there anything we didn't cover? I know you've been very, as I said, you've been very gracious with your time. We've been here about an hour. Anything you want to add that I didn't touch on?
Oh my, it's so much. It's a lot of
Yeah, it's a lot
time.
of
It's a
stuff.
lot of, it's a whole lot of,
I bet we could come back and do this all over again and not cover
probably not.
a minute of what we've covered
I
here.
could tell you, I
Probably
could
so.
tell you a whole lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.